The story begins in the late 1980s, during a tense chapter of the Cold War, in a quiet suburban town in Virginia. A modest diner called Eagle's Nest served as a popular stop for truckers and local families. Unbeknownst to its regulars, the diner was about to become the epicenter of an extraordinary FBI sting operation. Alex Hayes, a soft-spoken dishwasher in his late 20s, worked long hours in the back kitchen of the diner. He was the type of person who blended into the background. His coworkers often joked that Alex was a ghost, quiet, unassuming, and always moving about without drawing attention. But Alex had a secret. He wasn't just a dishwasher. He was an undercover FBI informant. For the past 6 months, Alex had been feeding information to the FBI about suspicious activity at the diner. It had started innocently enough, when he overheard snippets of hushed conversations between men who frequented the diner late at night. At first, he assumed they were just businessmen or travelers. But one night, while taking out the trash, Alex had stumbled upon the briefcase left behind by one of the men. Curiosity got the better of him. He opened the case just enough to glimpse its contents: blueprints, handwritten notes, and what appeared to be a small vial of some radioactive substance. Alex didn't know much about nuclear materials, but he knew enough to recognize that something dangerous was in motion. The next morning, Alex made an anonymous call to the FBI. Within 24 hours, 2 agents showed up at the diner. Special Agent Sarah Whitman and her partner, Agent Tom Reynolds, posed as traveling salespeople. They struck up casual conversations with the diner staff, gaining Alex's trust. After several weeks, Alex revealed what he had seen. Sarah and Tom quickly realized the gravity of the situation. Documents Alex had glimpsed were linked to stolen nuclear research from a top-secret government facility. The diner, it seemed, was being used as a meeting point for a clandestine spy ring. The FBI decided to keep Alex in his role as a dishwasher. While they launched a covert operation, they installed hidden cameras in the diner and bugged certain tables where the suspicious men often sat. Alex's job was to act normal while discreetly reporting anything unusual to Sarah and Tom during their routine visits. The stakes were high. The FBI had intercepted chatter about an imminent exchange of critical information between a rogue scientist and a foreign operative. The exchange was supposed to happen at the diner within weeks. Alex's role was pivotal. His access to the back rooms and his ability to move unnoticed made him the perfect asset. One evening, as Alex scrubbed dishes in the kitchen, he noticed a new face among the late-night regulars. The man was tall, with a sharp suit and an air of authority. He spoke in low tones with 2 others, and Alex caught a few words: shipment, timing, and secure location. Alex's pulse quickened. This was bigger than anything he had encountered before. An ostentist. Ensigned. Unbeknownst. Diese Taufanatandati. Gefängnisverkastend. After his shift, Alex slipped out the back door and met Sarah and Tom in a parked car down the street. He relayed what he had heard, and Sarah immediately recognized the description of the tall man. He was Viktor Petrov, a known operative for a foreign intelligence agency. The FBI ramped up their surveillance, and Alex found himself in the center of a dangerous game. Every move he made was crucial, and every misstep could cost lives. As the days passed, the tension in the diner became palpable. Alex knew the exchange was imminent, but he didn't know when or how deadly it might be. The FBI's operation at the Eagle's Nest diner was now in full swing. Every corner of the diner was under discreet surveillance, from the booths to the staff areas. Alex Hayes continued his shifts as if nothing had changed, but the weight of his secret was growing heavier. He barely slept, his mind replaying every overheard conversation and suspicious glance. Agent Sarah Whitman and Agent Tom Reynolds had become Alex's lifeline. They assured him that backup was nearby and that the FBI had his back. Still, Alex knew the reality. If he slipped up, it wouldn't just be his life at risk. The entire operation could unravel, allowing dangerous intelligence to fall into enemy hands. One night, the atmosphere in the diner shifted. It was a Thursday evening, quieter than usual. But something felt off. Alex noticed Viktor Petrov sitting in his usual corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee. Two other men joined him, one of them carrying a bulky briefcase. Alex strained to catch their conversation as he cleared nearby tables. He heard fragments of their discussion. The exchange is confirmed. Shipment secure. And final payment. His hands trembled as he wiped the table, but he forced himself to appear calm. He had to stay invisible. Later that night, Alex met Sarah and Tom in their usual meeting spot, a dimly lit parking lot behind an abandoned hardware store. He described the scene and repeated what he had overheard. Sarah's face was grim. "That's it," she said. "The exchange is happening soon. We need to identify the location of the shipment and intercept it before it's too late." Tom nodded. "Alex, this is critical. If you notice anything else in the thing at all, you need to let us know immediately." The next day, Alex's shift began like any other, but by mid-afternoon, a sense of unease settled over the diner. Several unfamiliar faces appeared among the regular customers, men in suits, speaking in hushed tones. Alex recognized one of them from the FBI's file on unknown foreign operatives. As Alex carried a tray of dirty dishes to the kitchen, he noticed something peculiar. One of the men had left a folded piece of paper on the counter near the cash register. Pretending to tie his shoe, Alex grabbed the paper and tucked it into his pocket. In the bathroom, Alex unfolded the note with trembling hands. It contained a single address and a time: 3:00 a.m. the following morning. The address wasn't far from the dinner and old warehouse on the outskirts of town. Alex knew he had just stumbled upon a crucial piece of the puzzle. That evening, Alex relayed the information to Sarah and Tom. Sarah's eyes widened as she read the note. "This is it," she said. "The exchange is happening at the warehouse." The FBI quickly mobilized. A SWAT team was assembled, and undercover agents were stationed around the warehouse. Alex, however, was given a new assignment. He was to remain at the diner during his shift and keep an eye on anyone who might be connected to the operation. Hours passed, and the tension was unbearable. The diner was unusually quiet, with only a few customers trickling in. Alex felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap at any moment. At exactly 2:45 a.m., a black sedan pulled into the diner's parking lot. Viktor Petrov stepped out, accompanied by the man with the briefcase. They didn't enter the diner, but instead spoke quietly by the car. Alex watched from the kitchen window, his heart pounding. He reached for the hidden microphone sewn into his uniform and whispered, "They're on the move. Black sedan, heading east." Zara's voice crackled through his earpiece. "We've got them. Stay put, Alex. You've done your part." But Alex couldn't stay put. Something told him the operation wasn't going as planned. Ignoring Zara's instructions, he slipped out the back door and followed the sedan on foot, staying in the shadows. As the car disappeared down the road, Alex's determination grew. He had come too far to back out now. Little did he know, his decision would lead him straight into the heart of the danger end. Alex Hayes trailed the black sedan through the quiet streets, his pulse pounding in his ears. The car turned onto a dirt road that led to the old warehouse at the edge of town. Alex kept his distance, sticking to the tree line for cover. He couldn't risk being seen, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go horribly wrong. From his vantage point, Alex could see dim lights glowing through the warehouse windows. Shadows moved inside the figures, exchanging briefcases, shaking hands. Viktor Petrov was there, standing tall and composed, his every move exuding confidence. Alex had no way of knowing that inside the warehouse, a different kind of game was unfolding. The FBI had set up a sting operation, positioning agents in strategic locations to catch the spies red-handed. But the operatives were skilled, and the slightest mistake could give away the FBI's presence. Suddenly, Alex noticed a second car approaching the warehouse. This one was a dark SUV, its windows heavily tinted. It stopped just short of the entrance, and two men stepped out. One of them carried a steel case that looked like it required a special code to open. Alex whispered into his hidden microphone. Another car just arrived. Two men, one carrying a locked case. Agent Sarah Whitman's voice crackled in his earpiece. Understood. Stay hidden, Alex. We've got this covered. But Alex couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in his gut. Something was off. He scanned the area and noticed movement on the warehouse roof. Someone crouching, watching. Alex realized with a jolt that it wasn't an FBI agent. The figure was holding a rifle with a scope, positioned to cover the warehouse entrance. Zara, Alex hissed into his mic. There's a sniper on the roof. He's aiming at the entrance. There was a moment of silence. Then Sarah's voice came through, sharp and urgent. We didn't anticipate a sniper. Alex, stay out of sight. We'll adjust our approach. Alex's mind raced. He knew the FBI agents were about to walk into a trap. The sniper could pick them off before they even made their move. He couldn't just stand there and do nothing, against every instinct telling him to stay put. Alex began to climb a stack of crates near the warehouse. His goal was to reach the sniper before it was too late. The climb was treacherous, the wood creaking under his weight. But Alex moved with a quiet determination. As he reached the roof, Alex spotted the sniper just a few feet away. The man was focused on his target, oblivious to Alex's presence. Alex crept closer, his heart hammering in his chest. Then, without warning, the sniper shifted, sensing something behind him. He turned, his eyes locking onto Alex. For a split second, neither of them moved. Then the sniper reached for his sidearm. Alex lunged forward, grabbing the barrel of the rifle and shoving it upward. The sniper stumbled, and the two men grappled in the shadows. Alex fought with everything he had, knowing that if he failed, the entire operation would be compromised. The fight was brutal but brief. With a final surge of strength, Alex managed to disarm the sniper and knock him unconscious. His hands shook as he secured the rifle and tossed it over the edge of the roof, breathing heavily. Alex whispered into his mic. Sniper neutralized. You're clear to move in. Sarah's voice came through, filled with a mixture of relief and urgency. Good work, Alex. Now, get out of there before someone else spots you. But Alex didn't have time to retreat. Below him, the scene at the warehouse was escalating. FBI agents burst through the doors, shouting commands. Chaos erupted as the operatives attempted to flee. Viktor Petrov, calm even in the face of disaster, grabbed the steel case and bolted toward the back exit. Alex watched as Petrov disappeared into the night, taking with him the very secrets the FBI had been trying to recover. Despite the successful sting, Alex knew the operation wasn't over. Petrov was still out there, and the stolen nuclear data was in his hands. The stakes had just been raised, and Alex was about to find himself drawn even deeper into the dangerous world of espionage. As the dust settled inside the warehouse, FBI agents rounded up the remaining operatives. The briefcases left behind were quickly secured, and the detained spies were taken into custody for questioning. Despite the partial success, Agent Sarah Whitman's face was grim. Viktor Petrov had slipped through their fingers, along with the steel case containing top-secret nuclear research. Alex Hayes made his way back to the diner, under the cover of darkness. His uniform was torn, his knuckles bruised from the scuffle with the sniper. He couldn't shake the image of Petrov vanishing into the night, carrying with him the very information that could tip the balance of power in the Cold War. The next morning, Sarah and Tom met Alex in their unmarked car behind the diner. Sarah wasted no time. "Alex, what you did last night was reckless. You could have been killed. But you also saved lives. That sniper would have taken out half our team." Alex nodded, exhaustion etched on his face. "Petrov got away," he said quietly. "What happens now?" Tom sighed. "We interrogate the suspects we captured. Someone will crack and give us Petrov's location, but it's only a matter of time before he tries to leave the country with that case. We need to act fast." As the FBI worked around the clock, Alex returned to his shifts at the diner. He couldn't afford to let his coworkers, or the regular customers, sense that anything was amiss. But every time the bell above the door jingled, Alex's nerves spiked, half expecting Petrov or one of his men to walk in. 2 days later, Sarah called Alex with an update. "We've got a lead," she said. "One of the operatives we arrested mentioned a safe house outside the city. It's likely where Petrov is hiding." Alex hesitated. "What do you need me to do?" "Nothing yet," Sarah replied. "We're planning a raid, but we'll keep you informed." That evening, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The diner was unusually busy, filled with unfamiliar faces. A group of men in suits occupied a corner booth, speaking in hushed tones. Alex recognized one of them as someone he'd seen at the warehouse. His heart raced as he tried to remain inconspicuous. He grabbed a pot of coffee and approached their table, pretending to refill their cups. As he leaned in, he overheard fragments of their conversation. "Safe house tonight, at midnight, Petrov." Alex nearly dropped the coffee pot. He excused himself and hurried to the kitchen, where he discreetly activated the hidden microphone in his apron. "Sarah," he whispered, "I just overheard them talking about Petrov. They mentioned a safe house in midnight." Sarah's voice crackled in his ear. "Good work, Alex. Stay calm. We're dispatching a team now." The hours crawled by as Alex finished his shift. He couldn't stop thinking about what he'd heard. Midnight was fast approaching, and the thought of Petrov escaping once again was unbearable. At exactly 11:30 p.m., Alex slipped out of the diner and made his way toward the address Sarah had mentioned earlier. The safe house was a run-down building on the outskirts of town, its windows boarded up and its yard overgrown. From his hiding spot behind a cluster of trees, Alex watched as cars began to arrive. Men with briefcases and duffel bags entered the house, their expressions tense. Alex knew he should wait for the FBI, but he also knew time was running out. Unable to sit idly by, Alex crept closer to the house. He found an open window at the back and climbed inside, his movements silent and deliberate. The room he entered was dark and empty, but voices echoed from a nearby hallway. Alex pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear. Petrov's voice was unmistakably calm, commanding, and confident. "The exchange is still on schedule," Petrov was saying. "We'll leave at dawn." Alex's heart sank. If the exchange happened, the stolen nuclear data would be gone forever. He had to do something, but he was unarmed and outnumbered. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps snapped Alex out of his thoughts. A man entered the room, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Alex. Before Alex could react, the man reached for a weapon, acting on instinct. Alex grabbed a nearby chair and swung it with all his strength. The man collapsed, unconscious, and Alex quickly dragged him out of sight. He activated his microphone. "Sarah, I'm inside the safe house. Petrov is here, and they're planning to move at dawn. I need backup now." Sarah's voice came through, filled with urgency. "Alex, get out of there. The team is 5 minutes away." But Alex knew 5 minutes might be too late. He steeled himself, determined to buy the FBI as much time as he could. Alex Hayes crouched in the shadows, his breath steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. The safe house was teeming with activity. Men armed with weapons moved through the hallways, their voices low and purposeful. The air was thick with tension, and Alex knew he was in over his head. But there was no turning back. He had made it this far, and wasn't about to let Viktor Petrov disappear again. Alex's eyes darted around the dimly lit room, searching for anything he could use to his advantage. He spotted a stack of crates near the far wall, one of them partially open. Inside were small metallic canisters with warning labels in a language Alex didn't recognize. Whatever was in those crates, it was dangerous and likely tied to the stolen nuclear research. Alex moved closer, keeping low to avoid detection. As he examined the canisters, he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly ducked behind the crates, his heart pounding as two men entered the room. "The boss says we're leaving as soon as the trucks are loaded," one of them said. "Good," the other replied. "I don't like staying in one place too long. Too many eyes around here." Alex held his breath, waiting for the men to leave. When they finally exited the room, he let out a quiet sigh of relief. But his reprieve was short-lived. He heard raised voices down the hall, Petrov barking orders, his tone sharp and commanding. Alex knew he had to act fast. He activated his hidden microphone and whispered, "Sarah, the safe house is packed with armed men. They're loading crates of something dangerous. Petrov is here, but they're preparing to leave." Sarah's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Alex, stay hidden. The team is 2 minutes out. Don't engage." But Alex wasn't sure he could wait. He crept toward the hallway, staying close to the walls. The voices grew louder, and he peeked around the corner to see Petrov standing with two other men. One of them held the steel case that Alex recognized from the warehouse. And Petrov opened the case, revealing its contents. Blueprints, documents, and what appeared to be a small device with wires and blinking lights. Alex didn't need to be an expert to know that it was something dangerous, possibly a prototype of some kind. "Well, deliver this personally," Petrov said, snapping the case shut. "Make sure the others are ready to move." Alex's mind raced. If Petrov left with that case, everything they had worked for would be lost. He knew the FBI team was close, but he also knew they might arrive too late to stop Petrov. Summoning his courage, Alex picked up a nearby wrench and tightened his grip. He stepped into the hallway, his heart hammering in his chest. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the safe house. Petrov and the two men turned to face him, their expressions a mix of surprise and anger. "Who are you?" Petrov demanded. Alex didn't answer. Instead, he hurled the wrench toward the steel case, knocking it out of the man's hands. The documents spilled onto the floor, and chaos erupted. One of Petrov's men lunged at Alex, but Alex dodged, using his smaller size to his advantage. He grabbed a chair and swung it, knocking the man to the ground. Petrov barked orders, and more men poured into the hallway. Alex knew he was outnumbered, but he also knew he had to buy time. He grabbed the steel case and sprinted down the hallway, dodging bullets as they ricocheted off the walls. He burst through the back door of the safe house and into the night, his legs pumping as he ran toward the tree line. Behind him, He heard shouts and footsteps as Petrov's men gave chase. Just as Alex reached the cover of the trees, headlights appeared in the distance. The FBI team had arrived. Black SUVs screeched to a halt, and agents poured out, weapons drawn. A firefight erupted as the agents engaged Petrov's men. Alex dove behind a fallen log, clutching the steel case tightly. Sarah's voice came through his earpiece. "Alex, where are you?" "Behind the tree line." Alex replied, his voice breathless. "I've got the case." "Stay put. We're coming to you." Minutes felt like hours as the firefight raged on. Finally, Alex saw Sarah and Tom approaching, their weapons raised. "You're insane," Sarah said as she crouched beside him. "But you did it. You stopped him." Alex handed her the steel case, his hands trembling. "He's still in there," he said. "Petrov, you need to get him." Tom nodded. "We will, but first, let's get you out of here." As the agents escorted Alex to safety, he couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and unease. They had the case, but Petrov was still out there. And Alex knew that as long as Petrov was free, the danger wasn't over. The steel case was loaded into a secure FBI vehicle, and Alex Hayes watched from the sidelines as agents swarmed the safe house. The firefight had died down, but Viktor Petrov was nowhere to be found. His men had scattered into the night, leaving the FBI with only the remnants of his operation. Sarah Whitman approached Alex, her expression a mixture of relief and frustration. "We've secured the case and neutralized most of his team, but Petrov slipped through again." Alex shook his head, the weight of the night's events pressing down on him. "He's always one step ahead." "What's in the case?" Sarah's face hardened. "Top secret nuclear schematics and something else, components for a device we don't fully understand yet. Whatever it is, it's bad news." Tom joined them, his jaw tight with tension. "Petrov's trail is cold for now, but we've got a lead." One of the captured operatives mentioned a contact in the city, a high-level buyer, who might be Petrov's next move. Alex's exhaustion was replaced by a sense of determination. "What's the plan?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "We'll stake out the meeting point. But Alex, you've done enough. You're not an agent. You've put yourself in enough danger already." Alex met her gaze, his voice steady. "If Petrov gets away again, more lives will be at risk. I'm in this now, whether I like it or not." Sarah sighed, but didn't argue. She knew Alex's involvement had already been crucial. "Fine, but you follow our lead. No more going rogue." The next evening, Alex found himself sitting in an unmarked car with Sarah and Tom, parked near an upscale hotel in the heart of the city. The buyer, a wealthy industrialist with ties to foreign intelligence, was rumored to be meeting Petrov in one of the penthouse suites. Through a pair of binoculars, Alex watched as black sedans and luxury cars pulled up to the hotel's entrance. Men in suits stepped out, their movements confident and precise. "Do you see him?" Alex asked, his voice low. Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. But he'll be here. He needs that buyer as much as the buyer needs him." As the hours ticked by, tension filled the car. Finally, a familiar figure stepped out of a sleek black sedan. Viktor Petrov, his expression calm and unreadable, entered the hotel with 2 bodyguards in tow. "Target confirmed," Zara said into her radio. "All teams, hold your positions." Alex felt a surge of adrenaline as he watched Petrov disappear through the hotel's revolving doors. "What now?" Tom handed Alex an earpiece. We've got agents inside posing as hotel staff. They'll monitor Petrov's movements and signal when it's time to move in. Inside the hotel, undercover agents tracked Petrov to the penthouse suite. The buyer was already waiting, a man in his 60s, with silver hair and a cold demeanor. On the table between them sat a briefcase filled with cash and a small, unmarked box that Alex could only assume contained the stolen components. Petrov's voice was calm but firm. The schematics are encrypted. You'll receive the key once I'm safely out of the country. The buyer frowned. That wasn't the deal. I want the full package now. Petrov smiled faintly. And I want assurance that your payment won't vanish once I leave. We all take risks in this line of work. The tension in the room was palpable, and the agents listening in knew they had to act fast. Sarah gave the order, and the team moved in. Alex, still in the car, listened as chaos erupted over the radio. Agents stormed the penthouse. But Petrov and his bodyguards were prepared. Smoke grenades filled the room, and the sound of gunfire echoed through the earpiece. He's trying to escape, one of the agents shouted. Alex couldn't sit still. Ignoring Sarah's earlier warning, he bolted from the car and entered the hotel through the side entrance. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding as he climbed toward the penthouse. By the time he reached the top floor, the smoke had begun to clear. Petrov was nowhere in sight, but one of his bodyguards was unconscious on the floor. Alex scanned the room, his eyes landing on an open window. Without thinking, he climbed out onto the fire escape and spotted Petrov descending rapidly. "Stop!" Alex shouted, his voice cutting through the night air. Petrov glanced up, his expression one of annoyance rather than fear. He reached for a concealed weapon, but Alex was faster. He leapt down a level, tackling Petrov and knocking the weapon from his hand. The 2 men grappled on the narrow metal staircase, each fighting for the upper hand. Petrov was strong and skilled, but Alex's determination gave him an edge. With a final burst of strength, Alex slammed Petrov against the railing. The Russian spy staggered, and before he could recover, Alex secured him with a pair of handcuffs he'd taken from one of the agents. The FBI team arrived moments later, their expressions a mix of shock and relief. Sarah approached Alex, her eyes wide. "You just took down one of the most dangerous men in the world," she said. Alex nodded, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. "He won't hurt anyone else. Not on my watch." But as they escorted Petrov away, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the case wasn't closed. The buyer had vanished during the chaos, and the stolen nuclear components were still out there. Viktor Petrov sat in the interrogation room, his hands cuffed to the steel table. The fluorescent light above him cast harsh shadows across his face, but his expression remained calm, almost amused. He leaned back in the chair as if he were the one in control. Sarah Whitman stood behind the one-way glass, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Tom was beside her, his jaw clenched in frustration. "He's not going to crack," Tom said. "Guys like him are trained to resist interrogation. We could have him here for weeks and still get nothing." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She watched Petrov carefully, studying every nuance of his body language. "He is arrogant," she said finally. "He thinks he's smarter than us. That's his weakness." Tom raised an eyebrow. "So what's the plan? Stroke his ego until he slips up?" Sarah smirked faintly. "Something like that. But we need leverage. What's the status on the buyer?" Tom shook his head. "Still no trace. The agents on site said he vanished the moment the raid began. All we've got is a vague description and some grainy footage from the hotel cameras." "Then we focus on the case," Sarah said. "If we can figure out what those components are for, we might be able to connect the dots and force Petrov's hand. In the meantime, Alex Hayes was sitting in a small office down the hall, nursing a cup of coffee and trying to process everything that had happened. His body ached from the fight on the fire escape, but his mind was racing. When Sarah entered the room, Alex looked up. "What's going on?" "Did Petrov talk?" "Not yet," Sarah admitted. "But we're working on it. I need you to tell me everything you remember. From the safe house and the hotel. Every detail, no matter how small." Alex nodded and recounted everything he had seen. The crates in the safe house, the steel case, the brief exchange between Petrov and the buyer. When he mentioned the unmarked box on the table in the penthouse, Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Describe the box," she said. "It was small," Alex said, gesturing with his hands. "Maybe the size of a shoebox. No markings, just plain metal." Petrov handled it like it was fragile. Sarah exchanged a glance with Tom, who had entered the room halfway through Alex's account. "That could be the missing piece," she said. "We need to find that box." Tom nodded. "I'll put a team on it. If the buyer took it, there's a chance it's still in the city." As the agents worked to track down the buyer, Sarah returned to the interrogation room. She sat across from Petrov, her demeanor calm but firm. "Victor," she began, her voice measured, "we both know you're not going to stay silent forever. The longer you wait, the worse it gets for you." Petrov smirked. "And what makes you think I care about your threats? I've faced worse than this." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "You might not care about yourself, but I know you care about your network, the men who work for you, the deals you've spent years building. All of that is crumbling as we speak. Every minute you sit here, we're dismantling your operation piece by piece." For the first time, a flicker of annoyance crossed Petrov's face. Sarah pressed on. "We found the schematics in the steel case," she said. "We know about the buyer. It's only a matter of time before we find the rest. Help us now, and maybe you walk away with something. Stay silent, and you lose everything." Petrov's smirk returned, but it was weaker this time. "You think you're so clever," he said, "but you have no idea what you're dealing with." "Enlighten me," Sarah said, her tone sharp. Petrov leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The buyer isn't just some businessman. He has connections, powerful connections. You're in over your head, Agent Whitman." Before Sarah could respond, the door opened, and Tom entered with an urgent expression. He handed her a file and whispered, "You need to see this." Sarah excused herself and stepped into the hallway with Tom. She opened the file and scanned its contents. Inside were surveillance photos and reports from a team tracking the buyer. "We found him," Tom said. "He's at a private airstrip on the outskirts of the city. Looks like he's preparing to leave." Sarah's mind raced. "Do we have a team in place?" "They're moving in now," Tom replied. "But if he gets on that plane, he won't," Sarah said, her voice firm. "Let's go." Alex, who had overheard the conversation, stood up. "I'm coming with you." Sarah hesitated. "Alex, this isn't your fight anymore. You've done enough." "No," Alex said, his voice resolute. "I'm in this now. I've seen what Petrov and his people are capable of. If I can help stop them, I will." Sarah saw the determination in his eyes and nodded. "Fine, but you stay close to me and follow my lead. No heroics." The team sped toward the airstrip, the tension in the SUV palpable. As they approached, they saw the private jet on the tarmac, its engines already running. "We're out of time," Sarah said. "Move in." The SUVs screeched to a halt, and agents poured out, weapons drawn. The buyer's men opened fire, and the night erupted into chaos. Alex stayed low, following Sarah as they advanced toward the jet. He spotted the buyer climbing the stairs, the unmarked box clutched tightly in his hands. "There!" Alex shouted, pointing. Sarah raised her weapon and fired, hitting the buyer in the leg. He stumbled and dropped the box, which tumbled down the stairs. As the agents secured the scene, Alex approached the box cautiously. He picked it up and handed it to Sarah, who examined it carefully. "This is it," she said, her voice heavy with relief. This is what Petrov was after. But as they opened the box, their relief turned to dread. Inside was a small, intricate device or something that looked far more dangerous than they had anticipated. "What is it?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's face was grim. "Something we were never supposed to find." The device inside the box was compact but intricate. Tiny wires crisscrossed its surface, and small blinking lights indicated it was active. Sarah didn't recognize it immediately, but the sheer precision of its design made her uneasy. She handed it off to one of the FBI's tech specialists, who had accompanied the raid. "Get this back to the lab," Sarah said firmly. "I want a full analysis. Don't even think about touching anything until we know exactly what we're dealing with." The tech carefully placed the device into a secure container, and agents escorted it to a waiting vehicle. Meanwhile, Sarah turned her attention back to the scene. The buyer, still clutching his wounded leg, was being loaded into an ambulance under heavy guard. Tom approached her, his expression grave. "This isn't just some high-tech gadget," he said, gesturing toward the departing vehicle. "Whatever that thing is, it's way above our pay grade. We need answers fast." Sarah nodded. "We'll get them. But first, I need to deal with Petrov." Back at FBI headquarters, Petrov was still sitting in the interrogation room. He hadn't moved an inch since Sarah left, but his expression had shifted. He looked more confident now, as though he knew something they didn't. Sarah entered the room and placed a file on the table in front of him. "Your buyer is in custody," she said flatly. "We have the device. It's over." Petrov chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You think capturing one man and one piece of equipment means you've won? You don't even understand what you've taken." "Then explain it to me," Sarah said, leaning forward. Petrov's smile widened. "The device you found, it's not just a weapon. It's a key to a system so advanced your country can't afford for it to fall into the wrong hands. But the real question is, who are the wrong hands?" Sarah frowned. "Enough riddles. What does the device do?" Petrov shrugged. "That's not for me to say. But you've already made a mistake by taking it. Do you think your government will thank you for uncovering something they've tried so hard to keep hidden?" Before Sarah could respond, Tom burst into the room, his face pale. "We've got a problem," he said urgently. She followed him into the hallway, where Alex was waiting. His phone was in his hand and his face was filled with concern. "What's going on?" Sarah asked. Alex handed her the phone. On the screen was a live news broadcast showing footage of the airstrip raid. The reporter was describing the events in detail, including the capture of the buyer and the mysterious device. "How did this get out?" Sarah demanded. Tom shook his head. "I don't know, but it's everywhere now. Every major news outlet is running the story. Someone leaked it." Sarah's mind raced. If the story was public, it wouldn't be long before other interested parties came looking for the device. And if Petrov was right about its significance, they were in serious danger. "Double the security on the lab," she ordered. "No one gets near that device without my approval." As the team scrambled to contain the fallout, Sarah returned to Petrov. She slammed her hands on the table, her patience wearing thin. "Who leaked the story?" she demanded. Petrov laughed. You still don't get it, do you? The story wasn't leaked. It was released on purpose. You've stepped into something much bigger than you realize. Sarah narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? Petrov leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. There are people watching this case very closely, Agent Whitman. Powerful people, and they won't let you keep that device for long. It doesn't belong to you, or to your government. It's theirs. For a moment, Sarah considered the possibility that Petrov was bluffing, but the look in his eyes told her he was serious. In the lab, the tech team was working tirelessly to analyze the device. They had connected it to a series of monitors and were running diagnostics. But the data they were getting didn't make sense. It's like nothing we've ever seen, one of the technicians said. The technology is decades ahead of anything we know about, and it's definitely not American. Tom, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped inside. Then, whose is it? The technician hesitated. That's the thing, it's hard to say. Some of the components look Russian, but others, they're completely alien. Whoever built this had resources we can't even imagine. As the techs continued their analysis, an alert sounded throughout the building. The lights flickered, and the monitors in the lab went dark. What's happening? Sarah demanded as she rushed into the room. We're under some kind of cyber attack, one of the techs said, frantically typing on his keyboard. Someone's trying to access the system remotely. Shut it down, Sarah ordered. Disconnect everything. But before they could act, the device in the secure container began to emit a low, pulsating hum. The lights on its surface flickered erratically, and the hum grew louder. Get back! Sarah shouted, pulling the techs away from the device. Suddenly, the hum stopped, and the room was plunged into silence. Everyone held their breath, waiting for something to happen. Then, without warning, the device emitted a bright flash of light. When it faded, the container was empty. The device was gone. The room was silent, but the tension was palpable. Everyone stared at the empty container, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Where is it? Sarah demanded, her voice sharp. The lead technician shook his head, his face pale. Don't know. It just vanished. There's no trace of it in the room. Tom stepped forward, his jaw clenched. That wasn't just a device. That thing had some kind of self-defense mechanism, or teleportation. I don't even know how to explain this. Sarah looked around at the team. I need answers. Now, run diagnostics on the lab. Check the building's surveillance. Someone must have seen something. As the technicians scrambled, Sarah turned to Alex. Lock down the building. No one leaves, no one enters, and put Petrov in solitary. He's not talking to anyone until we figure this out. Alex nodded and rushed out of the room. In the interrogation room, Petrov sat calmly, a faint smirk on his face. He didn't even flinch when two agents stormed in and pulled him out of the chair. As they led him down the hallway, his smile grew wider. Meanwhile, Sarah and Tom reviewed the surveillance footage. The cameras inside the lab showed the device glowing brighter and brighter until the flash obscured the view. After the light faded, the container was empty, just as they had seen in person. There's nothing here, Sarah muttered. No one entered or exited the lab. The device just disappeared. Tom rubbed his temples. This is getting out of hand. If the story hadn't already leaked, we might have been able to keep this quiet. But now, people will come for it, Sarah, and they won't care if we don't have it anymore. Sarah leaned back in her chair, thinking. Then we need to figure out who those people are. Petrov knows something. I don't care how long it takes us to get it out of him. Hours later, Sarah sat across from Petrov again. This time, his confidence was unshaken. You look stressed, Agent Whitman, he said, leaning back in his chair. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Sarah replied coldly. Petrov shrugged. I warned you, that device wasn't yours to take. And now, it's gone. You should be thanking me for keeping you alive. The people who built that device? They don't play games. Who are they? Sarah pressed. Petrov chuckled. You're not ready for that answer. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. Enough with the cryptic nonsense. That device is gone, and now my team is in danger. You will tell me who's behind this, or I'll make sure you regret it. Petrov leaned forward, his tone suddenly serious. You think your government has no secrets from you? That they tell you everything? That device was part of a program so classified, most of your higher-ups don't even know it exists. You stumbled onto something you were never meant to see. Sarah frowned. What kind of program? Petrov smiled faintly. Let's just say it involves alliances that don't make it into the newspapers. Alliances your country would never admit to. The device is a product of one such partnership. But now that it's missing, the balance of power is about to shift. In the FBI's tech lab, the technicians continued their analysis of the residual energy left behind by the device. One of them, a young agent named Kevin, discovered something unusual. Agent Whitman, he called over the comms. I found something. Can you come down here? Sarah and Tom arrived moments later. Kevin gestured to a monitor displaying a strange pattern of data. This energy signature isn't like anything we've seen before, Kevin explained. It's not just electromagnetic, it has properties we can't even measure. But there's more. He pointed to a second monitor. This pattern matches activity we've seen at secure facilities across the country. Facilities we thought were dormant. Sarah leaned in. What kind of facilities? Kevin hesitated. Black sites, places the government denies exist. And whatever activated this device also activated something in those locations. It's like they're all connected. Tom looked at Sarah. This just went from bad to worse. If those sites are waking up, it's not a coincidence. Someone is pulling the strings. Meanwhile, in an undisclosed location, a shadowy figure watched the events unfold on a wall of monitors. The man was dressed in a tailored suit, his face partially obscured by the dim light of the room. A voice spoke from a nearby speaker. The device has been moved, as planned. The FBI is in disarray. The man nodded. Good. Let them scramble, but ensure they don't get too close to the truth. Activate the next phase. Understood, the voice replied. The man turned to face another monitor displaying live footage of Sarah. He smiled faintly. Agent Whitman, you've proven to be quite resourceful. Let's see how far you can go before the game ends. The discovery of the energy signatures linked to dormant black sites sent shockwaves through the FBI team. Sarah wasted no time assembling her agents in the war room. All right, listen up, she began, her voice firm. Whatever this device triggered, it's connected to facilities our government has kept off the books. We don't know who's controlling this, but we're not going to sit back and wait for the other shoe to drop. Tom stepped forward, pointing to a map on the screen. Several locations across the country were highlighted in red. These are the sites showing activity. Most are in remote areas, but one of them is in a decommissioned military base just 2 hours from here. That's our target, Sarah said. We need to find out what's going on inside before whoever is behind this realizes we're onto them. Tom, assemble a team. We're leaving in 30 minutes. As they approached the abandoned base, the team moved with precision, their movements silent and calculated. The sprawling complex loomed ahead, its rusted gates barely holding together. "Place looks dead," one of the agents whispered. "Looks can be deceiving," Sarah replied, her eyes scanning the area. "Stay sharp." The team breached the perimeter, their weapons drawn. Inside, the base seemed empty, with only the sound of their footsteps echoing through the vast corridors. But as they ventured deeper, they came across something unexpected. A series of large crates lined the walls of a hidden storage room. Each crate bore a strange insignia, one Sarah didn't recognize. "Open one," she ordered. Tom pried the lid off a crate, revealing rows of high-tech equipment, each piece more advanced than anything the FBI had ever seen. One device, in particular, caught Sarah's eye. It looked eerily similar to the one they had confiscated from Petrov's warehouse. "This isn't just a storage site," she said. "This is a distribution hub. They've been moving these devices for years, right under our noses." Tom examined the equipment. But to who? And for what purpose? Before Sarah could respond, a faint hum filled the room. The team froze, their eyes darting around. "Everyone take cover," Sarah shouted. Suddenly, the walls lit up with pulsating lights, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a sleek humanoid robot armed with advanced weaponry. "It's a defense system," one of the agents yelled. The robot's weapons activated, firing a barrage of laser-like beams. The team scrambled for cover, returning fire with their standard-issue firearms, which seemed to have little effect. "They need to take that thing down," Sarah yelled, motioning for Tom to flank it. Tom nodded, moving quickly along the side of the room. He spotted a control panel near the robot and signaled to Sarah. "Cover me!" he shouted. Sarah and the others laid down suppressive fire as Tom sprinted toward the panel. He slammed his hand on the controls, and the robot froze mid-attack, its lights dimming. The room fell silent again. "Good work," Sarah said, catching her breath. "But if this is their defense system, we're in for a lot more trouble." Back at headquarters, Kevin continued analyzing the data. He called Sarah on her secure line. "Agent Whitman, you're not going to believe this," he said. "What is it, Kevin?" "These devices, they're not just weapons. They're part of a network. I think they're designed to communicate with each other." "Whatever you just found, it's only one piece of a much larger puzzle." Sarah frowned. "How large are we talking?" Kevin hesitated. "Global. I've detected similar signals coming from Europe, Asia, and even Antarctica. Whoever's behind this, they've built an entire infrastructure, and it's been active for years." Sarah's mind raced. "Can you trace the origin of the signals?" "I'm working on it," Kevin replied. "But it's heavily encrypted. I'll need more time." "Keep me updated," Sarah said, ending the call. Meanwhile, in the hidden control room, the shadowy figure received an update from his operative. "The FBI team has discovered the hub," the operative reported. The man's expression remained calm. "As expected. Let them think they're making progress. It's all part of the plan." "Shall we activate the next site?" The man nodded. "Yes. But make sure the disruption looks accidental. We don't want them connecting the dots too quickly. And ensure Agent Whitman is kept alive. She's more useful to us than she realizes." Back at the base, Sarah's team secured the area and began cataloging the equipment. But something felt off. "Tom," Sarah said, pulling him aside. "This was too easy. If they went through the trouble of setting up defenses, why wasn't the whole base protected?" Tom nodded. "You think it's a trap?" "Not just a trap," Sarah replied. "A distraction. Whatever we're chasing, they want us to find it." The question is why? Suddenly, Kevin's voice came through Sarah's earpiece. Frantic. Sarah, you need to get out of there now. What is it? She asked. The energy signature from the base just spiked. It's emitting a signal. And I think it's calling reinforcements. As if on cue, the ground began to tremble, and the faint sound of engines roared in the distance. Everyone, move! Sarah shouted. The team rushed out of the base as the sound grew louder. Looking back, they saw several advanced drones descending from the sky, their weapons primed. This isn't over, Sarah muttered, her mind racing with possibilities. The team barely made it out of the base before the drones unleashed their fury. Explosions erupted behind them as they scrambled into their vehicles, the heat of the blast searing their backs. Go! 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 Sarah yelled, slamming the passenger door as Tom floored the gas pedal. The convoy sped down the winding road, the drones in hot pursuit. Their sleek forms moved with unnerving precision, firing plasma bolts that struck dangerously close to the fleeing vehicles. What? Kevin, we need help now, Sarah shouted into her comms, her voice barely audible over the chaos. I'm rerouting a signal to jam their communications, Kevin replied, his fingers flying over his keyboard. But it'll take a few minutes. Just hold on. Sarah grabbed the radio. Everyone, split up. They can't chase all of us. The convoy veered in different directions, some vehicles heading toward the woods while others took the main road. 3 drones followed Sarah and Tom, their weapons locking on. We need to fight back, Tom said, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. Right in war. Sarah nodded, reaching for the rifle in the back seat. She rolled down her window and leaned out, aiming at the nearest drone. She fired several rounds, but the bullets ricocheted off its armored exterior. These things are bulletproof, she yelled. Tom swerved to avoid another blast, the car skidding dangerously close to the edge of a steep cliff. We can't keep this up much longer. Back at headquarters, Kevin worked furiously. The drone's signals were encrypted, with layers of code he'd never seen before. He bypassed one firewall after another, sweat dripping down his face. Finally, a breakthrough. I've got it, he shouted. He typed a final command, and the drones chasing Sarah suddenly wobbled midair, their lights flickering. One crashed into a tree, exploding on impact. The other 2 veered off course, colliding with each other and detonating in a fiery blaze. They're down, Kevin said, relief evident in his voice. Good work, Sarah replied, catching her breath. But this isn't over. Whoever sent those drones knows we're onto them. The team regrouped at a safe house miles away. The mood was tense as they processed what had happened. Those drones were military grade, Tom said. No way a private group could get their hands on tech like that without someone high up looking the other way. Or helping them, Sarah added. Kevin appeared on a nearby monitor. I've traced the signal they were using to communicate. It's bouncing off servers in multiple countries, but I managed to narrow down the origin point. A map appeared on the screen, a single red dot blinking in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. An offshore facility? Kevin said, completely unregistered. It's practically a fortress. Sarah stared at the map. That's where we'll find the answers. We need to hit it and fast. The team began preparing for the mission. Supplies were loaded, weapons checked, and intelligence reviewed. But Sarah knew this would be their most dangerous operation yet. Tom, you're in charge of breaching the main facility, she said during the briefing. I'll lead the secondary team to secure the control room. And we need to shut this operation down for good. What about reinforcements? Tom asked. We'll have backup on standby, Sarah replied. But we're going in dark. If we tip them off, we'll lose our only chance. The journey to the facility was uneventful until they neared the coordinates. As the helicopter descended, The team saw the sprawling structure below. It was surrounded by high-tech defenses, including automated turrets and patrolling drones. "We're definitely not welcome here," Tom muttered. The pilot landed the helicopter on a nearby island to avoid detection. From there, the team used inflatable boats to approach the facility under the cover of darkness. As they reached the outer perimeter, Sarah gave the signal to move. The team advanced silently, using the shadows to their advantage. Inside, the facility was a maze of corridors and security checkpoints. The team moved quickly, disabling guards and cameras as they went. "This place is massive," Tom whispered. Sarah nodded. "Stay focused. We're getting close." They reached the control room, where a single operative sat at a terminal. He turned, startled, as the team burst in. "Hands where I can see them," Sarah ordered. The man smirked. "You're too late." Before Sarah could respond, he pressed a button on his console. The screens lit up, displaying a countdown timer. "What is this?" she demanded. "Insurance," the man replied. "You shut us down here, but the network is already active. In less than an hour, every major city in the world will experience a coordinated cyber attack." Sarah's heart raced. "Kevin, do you see this?" Kevin's voice came through her earpiece. "I'm on it. I'll try to disable the signal remotely. But you need to buy me time. Tom, secure him," Sarah ordered, pointing to the operative. She turned to the rest of the team. "We need to find the main server and shut this place down now." The team split up, searching for the server room. Zara and Tom led the charge, navigating the labyrinth of corridors. When they finally reached the server room, they were met with a sight that made Sarah's stomach drop. Rows upon rows of servers filled the space, each one humming with power. "This is it," Tom said. Sarah nodded. "Kevin, Wayne, tell us what to do." "See that terminal on the far wall?" Kevin replied. "You'll need to manually override the system, but be careful, the network has built-in failsafes. One wrong move, and the entire facility could self-destruct." Sarah approached the terminal, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. She began typing, following Kevin's instructions. The countdown timer continued to tick down, each second feeling like an eternity. "Almost there," Kevin said. "Just a little more." Suddenly, an alarm blared, and the room was bathed in red light. "They know you're there," Kevin shouted. The sound of boots echoed in the corridors outside the server room. Reinforcements were closing in fast. "One down." "Tom, lock the door!" Sarah yelled, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she worked to override the system. Tom rushed to the door, jamming it with a steel pipe he found nearby. "That's not going to hold them for long," he said, turning back to Sarah. Sarah ignored him, focused on the terminal. Kevin's voice crackled through her earpiece. "You're almost there. Just one more sequence to disable the main relay." The countdown timer on the screen read 03:45. Tom grabbed his rifle and took up position near the door. The pounding from the other side grew louder as the guards tried to break through. "Sarah, we've got company!" he shouted. "Keep them off me!" She snapped, her voice filled with urgency. Outside, the rest of the team fought to hold their ground. Automated turrets sprang to life, targeting their positions. Bullets ricocheted off the walls as the team returned fire. "Fall back positions," one agent yelled, diving behind cover. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they held the line, buying Sarah the precious time she needed. Inside the server room, the door buckled under the relentless assault. The guards on the other side were using a battering ram now, and it was only a matter of seconds before they broke through. Tom glanced at Sarah. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Sarah didn't answer. She was fully immersed in the system, her mind racing to keep up with Kevin's rapid instructions. Disable the final node, Kevin said. It's the only way to stop the countdown. The timer read 0, 1:15. Sarah entered the last command and hit execute. For a moment, the screen went black. Then, the words "system override successful" flashed across the monitor. I did it, she shouted. The countdown timer froze at 00:53. But their relief was short-lived. The door to the server room burst open, and armed guards poured in. Get down, Tom yelled, firing at the intruders. Sarah ducked behind the terminal, grabbing her pistol. The room erupted into chaos as bullets flew in every direction. Tom took out 3 guards, but more kept coming. We're out of time, Sarah. We need to move. Not yet, she replied, reaching for a flash drive plugged into the terminal. I'm downloading the data. We need evidence to shut this operation down for good. Tom covered her as she completed the transfer. The progress bar inched forward, agonizingly slow. Outside, Kevin's voice came through the comms. Sarah, reinforcements are inbound. Extraction in 5 minutes. We don't have 5 minutes, Tom yelled back. The flash drive finally ejected, and Sarah grabbed it. Let's go. The 2 of them fought their way out of the server room, taking down guards as they moved. The corridors were a blur of gunfire and smoke. When they reached the exit, a helicopter hovered above, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. A rope ladder dropped down and the team began to climb. As the helicopter lifted off, Sarah looked down at the facility. Explosions rocked the structure as Kevin remotely triggered the failsafe. It's over, Tom said, slumping against the wall of the helicopter. Sarah held up the flash drive. Not yet. We still need to take this to HQ, back at FBI headquarters. The team presented their findings. The data on the flash drive contained everything. Names, locations, and financial records of the entire spy ring. The director reviewed the evidence and nodded. This is the break we've been waiting for. Good work, all of you. The operation made headlines worldwide. The spy ring's leaders were arrested, and their network dismantled. Sarah, Tom, and the team were hailed as heroes, their actions preventing what could have been a global catastrophe. But as Sarah watched the news coverage, she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't truly over. Something's bothering you, Tom said, sitting beside her. Sarah nodded. We stopped them this time, but someone else will take their place. The fight never really ends. Tom smiled. 10 will be ready. Sarah glanced at the flash drive on the table. Yeah, we'll be ready.